and I decided to switch majors and go into nursing. My mom's actually a nurse, so it felt like the safest, most guidable journey for me, and I don't regret it at all. I love all the friendships I made. I grew into myself as a nurse, and I learned to use my voice during that time. And then I became a nurse at a county hospital for about 3 years. And then I did some travel nursing because the county hospital was, in my opinion, not being managed the best that it could. And I was tired of fighting against the system. So I became a travel nurse for a couple months. And then after a couple months, I got sick. They found a birth defect in my kidney, and then that led to swelling and caused a bunch of problems. And at the same time, I was having PTSD flashbacks that led to a PTSD diagnosis at the same time. And I ended up with PTSD and fibromyalgia. And so I had to switch gears and figure out a way to create a job that was sustainable for my health and just something that would spark a little bit of passion back into me. And I've always been great at research. And that's kind of how I started. I started while I was sick, bartering with people that needed help researching things. And then I realized that I could throw the label of virtual assistant onto that. So that's how I became a virtual assistant.
So when you were going through the period of being a nurse and then you eventually transitioned into a virtual assistant, there was like this period of time from what you shared where you're going through some health concerns. A lot of people would have probably given up at that point, or maybe they would have reacted a little bit differently, finding out that they had all these issues that maybe wasn't in their control, especially when you mentioned that people said that, well, you're quiet here, you won't be able to do this, and then you have this feedback, and then you have the health concerns as well. How were you able to navigate all of the whispers from the outside, right? Those who are saying these things about you, and then the whispers in your own mind as you're dealing with your health issues.
I have to say they're not whispers. They're like loud shouts. They're just telling you, oh, you can't do this. Oh, and they're not whispers. They're very loud. But I have to say, when I was travel nursing, I decided that I wanted to get some therapy. And so the first therapist that I got, it was very structured in a way that my brain just actually felt more more like I was failing at therapy than anything else. So I searched for something that I could relate to, and I found a program who I love mentioning because they saved my life. And that program is Debriefing the Front Lines. And I met a wonderful counselor. Her name is Tara, and she got me through the time that was the hardest. When like I don't blame anybody who goes through all sorts of things and wants to give up, because yeah, I did too. It's a process that I'm surprised sometimes that I made it through, but it was definitely therapy. Well, it's a form of therapy. She's a counselor with Tara. She created a program for me in a sense because I didn't feel safe going into an inpatient setting where, like, you're hospital. Like, I cannot, me being a nurse, I, it was a struggle to see myself being hospitalized for PTSD specifically. And I couldn't see it helping me in the long run. And so she created a virtual program where I met with her um, sometimes it was twice a week, I think. And it was the only thing I would look forward to. So that kept me basically alive.
How did that impact your relationships during that time, maybe romantic, but as well as with other people?
With other people, it definitely impacted my family relationships. I distanced myself, and I am still distant from a lot of family. And my friends, I'm very fortunate to have very close friends that understood, maybe not really understood everything that I went through, but they understood me and they accepted me. And romantic relationships, I've never really been good at, so that's that was never during that time.
You sound
But
like me because there's a time where I couldn't make anything work romantically. I was like, geez, like I'm gonna look to the future and probably build my next girlfriend from whatever I can find. And the reason why I asked that is I know that sometimes some people, when they go through like a health scare or they go through a medical situation or anything health related, it can feel very isolating, right? Because you may think that sometimes those around you or those who try to lean on, they don't understand what you're going through. They just don't get it. And then there's a flip side where, let's say, for example, you're to reach out to someone and they don't comfort you or support you in the way that you're expecting, and they make it worse. Like they will say something as, "Oh, you know what? You're just going through that. Anissa, just rub some vinegar on it and some oil, and you'll be fine." Like these 1900 remedies, right? But it was good to hear that you had the support of people because that isn't something that a lot of people do have. I know sometimes we can look for love and supports in all the wrong areas. Was there some hesitation for you to maybe reach out, not knowing how the person was going to react when you needed their support?
yes, I deal a lot with that with my mom. It's taken her a long time to recognize that I have fibromyalgia and PTSD, that it's in a form that's very debilitating sometimes. Um, it's it's a hit or miss. I don't know what kind of support I'm going to get. And so I sometimes I tend to distance myself because of that. I don't know what the feeling's going to be like. And just throwing this in there, when I was sick um, and going through therapy with Tara, I realized that there was a part of me that my brain could understand, but my body couldn't. And I had to search for another form of therapy that could help me with the overwhelming feelings that my body was having. And I found somatic therapy and I found Aaliyah Lesko. Um, Amazing support. Also, that's the way I got through it. And when I say it, the PTSD and the fibromyalgia. But going back to my mom, I would get this overwhelming feeling of chaos. It's like this bouncing ball up and down my chest that I don't know what kind of answer or conversation I'm going to get when I talk to her. And so somatic therapy helped me kind of um kind of redirect that energy, and kind of we feel that energy, like, yeah, I can recognize that it's a bouncing ball, and then we work on slowing that ball down and making that basically rewire my nervous system, if that makes sense, to kind of process and move forward into a place where I feel safe.
And
So
what
yeah.
does your safe place look like to you?
um my safe place is not something that I see most of the time. It's something that I feel, and it's a feeling of calmness. It's a feeling of peace. It's a feeling of deep rest. Because on the opposite spectrum is the feeling of chaos, the feeling of depression,